founders, it's Christy Bareijsza, and I'm your catalyst to finding her. Let's get started. Hey, here we are again, and my name is Christy Bareijsza, and I am not a therapist, I am not a life coach, hell, I am not even a psychologist. I am just a woman who has experienced overwhelming changes, both personally and professionally, that have landed me in places I never thought I'd be in my entire life. But here we are. And I'll tell you right now, I will continue to make mistakes, and I will continue to try and make more mistakes because it keeps life interesting and it makes great stories. So, the relatable stories that I will be telling are from my perspective. And, it's okay if some of you guys might remember it differently who know me personally and have been listening. But, the names will be changed to protect the innocent and the guilty. But let's make a very, very long story short. What I'm here more than anything else is just to be a catalyst for change. So let's talk about it. Okay, founders, in episode 1, we talked about starting over and covered the following bullet points. Number 1, how to accept that change happens at all ages and is constant. So as I always like to say, starting over sucks, but it's never too late to start over. And, the more that you accept the fact that things are always going to be temporary and change is constant, the more willing you're able to kind of lean into the whole situation and handle it a little bit better. And handle it in a way that's a little bit more graceful instead of just falling completely on your ass, which I've done my share of over and over again. Number 2, making a conscious choice to choose yourself, which I've always said as sisters, mothers, friends, lovers, it's daughters. It's one of those things that a lot of women will feel as though they're being very selfish and, not doing what they're supposed to by choosing yourself. But the bottom line is, if you don't choose you, no one else is going to choose you. And that's so critical. And the only way to make it better for everyone else is to make it better for yourself first. It's kind of, they always use that airplane analogy. When the airbags come down, you have to put it on yourself before you put it on someone else. And you have to use that in the process of starting over too, just that same mindset. Number 3, being accountable for how you got to this point and eliminating the victim mentality. So, yeah, that's a big one. And I can't stress it enough. Nobody's a victim here. Your decisions led you up to this point. It's good. It's okay. It's nobody's a victim. We're in it, and we're making those conscious choices and just owning it and being accountable for how you got here. Good, bad, and different. It's your life. We only have one life to live, and it's super important to just, move forward with that and move forward in a straight, clear mindset versus, looking at it in a way where this happened to you. Life doesn't happen to you. You make life happen. Number 4, understanding rejection is redirection. And that's a big thing too. A lot of times that rejection is a blessing in disguise, or it's a situation that looks a lot different than you thought it would look, but it doesn't mean that it's a negative thing because it might not be meant for us. Not everything that you want is always meant for you. And sometimes that big picture isn't seen until years, months, whatever, days after the situation happens. And you always have to keep that in mind, that when things don't work out, it's just not meant to be, but there's something greater. There's a lesson in it. There's just so many different aspects than what is staring at you from face value. Number 5, becoming introspective to understand what motivates you and excites you further to develop your skills and talents, which, where's that inspiration? Because a lot of times we get caught in day-to-day life and it just stops. It goes away. It's just you're living life. You're not living life fully. And really, truly understanding what makes you tick as a person, and also having the ability to utilize social media and utilize different aspects in your day-to-day to hone into a new exciting career or new exciting passion that's going to make a difference and make you inspired again and make you feel good about yourself and potentially be able to monetize it too, where you're making your own money, which is amazing. But also finding that and finding what your talents are, or sometimes too educating yourself even more in a direction that you've always been really excited about. It's such a great thing when you're starting over, because you have a full open platform to do whatever you want, and that's pretty fucking special. And let's talk about making the decision to move forward willingly and positively, which is number 6, and so just emphasized with 1 through 5. Like, if you're not in it fully, people will call bullshit. And you a lot of times you just don't have a choice when you're starting over. But you can go into it dragging your feet, or you can go into it walking with your head held high. And that is what you need to do. I know it's not easy. And it's, and there's days that you'll feel like, absolutely, I'm moving forward. And there's days like you're going to turn around and be like, what the fuck? What just happened? I thought I was in the right direction. But also knowing that that direction that you're moving forward isn't always going to be a straight line. It might be a little bit curved. It might be a hill. It might be a valley. But knowing that that end result is going to happen, where you're going to move on to the next chapter of your life that's going to be better and more fulfilling, knowing that you've approached this in a way that is the right way to approach it, is going to be that game changer into moving forward. So as we've gone through starting over, once we get to that point where we've made that decision, we're going to now dive into the next topic, which seems really super easy in theory. And we've been taught this over and over again, but it's not. And it's forgiveness, which I know I have a hard time with. So, I know you guys totally adore my quotes. So you ready? This is my quote that I'm going to tie into this whole kind of mindset. So let me clear my throat, and let's talk about this quote. So, the moment before letting go is often when we grip the hardest. It's so fucking true. So with that, understanding that, that change is coming, it's there, but when we forgive, we really, truly have to let go of the situation, the person, whatever the case is. And that's not easy. And for me personally, I am queen, I like whole crown queen, of replaying scenarios in my head over and over and over again and not letting go. And it'll make you stuck. I mean, and I also come from a family that will remind you of situations that have not been positive from 20 years ago or 30 years ago that will then continue to replay. But then they replay differently because, you're older and you've had more experience and you've had, different experience, like different, elements that have now tied into that scenario that, could I have done this differently? Could I have not done this differently? Could I have said this? Could I have not said this? What if I didn't say that? What if I didn't do this? And it becomes a toxic pattern. And listen, not only am I a member, I am the president of that club. So I completely understand the difficulty that it happens with trying to let go and also understanding, what to do and how to deal with it. So let's talk about how to maneuver through this challenging mindset, because it's not an easy process. So the first thing is, freedom only comes after you choose to forgive yourself and others. So that first step is always the hardest. So, being that I have been in different scenarios like a divorce or things that have caused you to start over, moving to a city that maybe I wasn't, completely in love with, whatever the case is, it's those decisions that you make and then you say, did I do it? Did I not do it? Was I doing this out of haste, or was I doing this because I got in a fight with someone, or I was arguing, or was it out of an ego decision versus it being something that I really truly thought about or was led from by my heart? So, having to get to that point where it's always that, I'm trying to think what that quote is, basically drinking poison, trying to kill the other person. There was that old quote or something to that effect. You'll have to remind me of exactly what it is. But it's one of those things where forgiveness doesn't have to always do with a situation or a party or a scenario. Sometimes it just has to be that you forgive yourself for the circumstance. But once again, it's not a victim mentality saying, well, I'm going to forgive myself because I was a victim in this and all this stuff happened to me. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is sometimes you just have to look at a point and be like, this is what the lesson was. This is what I learned. And I may have not made those right decisions, but I did. And I have to let it go. I feel like Elsa right now from Frozen. So, you just got to let it go. And how that looks doesn't always look like it's a black and white situation or in a way that's just like, okay, well, one day I'm going to wake up and it's gone. It's actively focusing your mindset in a way that says, you know what? I can't do anything else to change this. I can only control this to this point. I can control what I can do, what I can say, how I can feel. And with that, you will start to begin to train your body, train your mind to allow things to just go and just pass them on and give peace to them. And how you're going to give peace to them is you're going to take a moment to properly mourn the past. So you got to give it a funeral. Like it's a real live, burial. And, sometimes people actually do it physically where they're saying goodbye, they're saying their words, they're saying things that will make them feel good. I mean, they've even kind of gone to the extent of putting together a casket situation where they're literally, putting that scenario, that person to rest. But it's also one of those things too, where it's like you have to mourn that situation where, sometimes when it's a divorce or time wasted or, a career decision that might have not gone the way that you thought it was going to, you have to mourn that decision and say, hey, it's dead, it's gone, it's dead. Cry about it. I mean, have a celebration about it. Go out with your girlfriends. Like there's a number of things that you can do, but when you do that and you mourn it, you dead it. Okay. There's so many times I've been in scenarios where, especially with a breakup, that girl will mourn them, but then they continue to talk about it over and over and over and over and over and over again, to the point where I can't even fucking listen to it anymore. And most people can't either. And at that point, you're not letting go. You're not forgiving. You're just reliving that scenario, acting as though you're forgiving, which is a big difference. Because it's not genuine. And that's part of it. And there's a blockage that's not allowing you to let go. And that's something that you're going to have to kind of come to terms with yourself, because you're going to carry that stress. You're going to carry that stress in your body. You're going to carry that stress in your mind. You're going to carry that, it's going to affect your sleep. It's going to affect how you feel, how you eat, how much energy that you have. So when you properly mourn it, it has to be genuine, and it has to be in a way, and however that way looks for you, that it's over. Whether it's an argument, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a relationship, whatever the case is, you have to let it go. And the thing is, too, with that, you may be letting it go and that friendship is over or that relationship is over, or you may be letting it go and continuing that relationship, but then that relationship needs to look differently. It cannot look the same as it was before. And that's a common mistake that a lot of people make, is they'll look at it and say, okay, for instance, say cheating. It's a great example. I personally am a person that I value trust, I value transparency, I value authenticity. It's something that's critical for me. I give it to you, I expect it in return, especially in my relationships. And cheating is something that I cannot look past because there's that deception. And that's my own personal opinion. That's just me. That's not saying, every relationship is different. Every tolerance level is different based on what your priorities are. And I cannot answer those questions for you. But it's also one of those situations where, for me, cheating is not something that I can look past. So in a situation like that relationship would be over. I would forgive. I would mourn that relationship because it sucks when something like that happens. But some, men, women, they want to stay in that relationship because, whether they have children, whether they have, whatever they feel as though is best for them. But it should be best for them as an individual person, not best for the kids, not best for the family, not best for society, not best for anything else than this scenario. And that scenario, it's best for you because of something personal, not finances, not the children, not image, not none of that, which we will talk further in as we go through these 10 steps. But whatever that decision is, and if you do decide to stay because circumstances happen that way, like I said, a lot of times relationships, business contacts, all of these things are very gray. They're not black and white. And with that forgiveness, you have to now take that relationship and modify that relationship where it looks completely different, because it cannot be that same relationship again. Any relationship obviously evolves, but that at that moment when you're choosing for that, that's when you have to literally change your mindset to move forward in a way that you forgive yourself, you forgive the person that is involved in this, and you go from there. And funerals are great for that. I mean, they cry about it, get it out. Like, you have to get that energy out of you. You got to get that emotion out of you. And once you do, you kind of realize with time it does heal. It really does heal everything. It just needs to heal in a way that is, what's the word for it? Successful, but also heal in a way that's productive. Because that productive healing is going to make you feel like you have accomplished something versus it just being like, oh, I'm going to put a Band-Aid on it. Like, you don't want to ever put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. It doesn't work because the wound is never going to heal. And you have to mourn it in a way that you are physically and emotionally trying to heal that wound. So that's super important. So with that, you have to be thankful for the lessons learned, because this is a pivotal moment for you because of this situation. And, it's one of those things where, we talked about with starting over, rejection is redirection. It's a similar concept where you have to say, okay, this scenario has happened to me because of A, B, C, D, whatever the case is. With that, I have to be thankful that it's presented itself to me now at this moment, because I will continue to say, I've said this over and over again, time is the only thing you can never get back. You can get back friends, you can get back money, you can get back, just different things in life, but you can never, time is something that when it's gone, it can never be replaced. And time is not promised. So every day is super special, and you have to be thankful that this situation presented it to you at that moment, because that moment is when it's supposed to happen, and you need to look it square in the eye and not put it away, not hide it, not just, tuck it away and deal with it later. You have to hit that head on, because it's that moment to really look inside you, be introspective about it, and say, okay, how am I going to deal with this situation? And what is forgiveness going to look like for me? Because that's really important. So I saw this line in a book, and it hit home for me. Because a lot of times too, you just, I come from a world of I used to relate a lot to Charlotte from Sex and the City with the waspy situation where we never fight in public, we hide everything under the rug, and, it eventually goes away, which is bullshit. It doesn't go away. It just comes back in another form, and it comes back a bigger whirlwind than the first time around. So, with that, I was kind of taught that, you just say you're sorry and you move on. But what are you sorry about? Or what does the person apologize to you about? What is that forgiveness really look like? Because sorry is just a word. And I know a lot of people like to hear that word. I apologize. I'm sorry. But the bottom line is it's the actions that take place. Because you could keep saying you're sorry over and over again. But like if you keep doing the same fucking shit, it's sorry doesn't mean shit. It doesn't matter. And it's more of a Band-Aid. And that's not what it's meant to be, because it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't create a resolution, and it doesn't give you the opportunity to move on, whether you're moving on for something you did or for something that the other person has done to you. So I digress. But this line in the book I thought was really kind of important. It just, like I said, hit home. And I quote, she said, "I'm not giving up. The woman I'll be in a few years from now is counting on me." And then the world shifted. It's kind of fucking powerful. So, you got to do this for you. And that's the thing. Where you're going to be in a few years is partly because of where you are now. So how do you look at that? And how do you, tell your younger self, like if you could go back in time and say to your younger self, which we always have these conversations, like if you could go back to yourself in high school, and what would you fucking tell her? I don't know if I would believe much if I don't know. I thought I knew it all. I kind of still think I know a lot, but I've also kept my eyes open enough to learn from people. And I think that's always something, and that's a little bit generational too, where I've always had some good mentors. I've had people that I know in my, career, my industry and my, with my career, but also just with different things where I ask a lot of advice, because I'm always curious to kind of gather and kind of look at what other people are saying, see if they see it from a different perspective than I, because I also don't like to be in situations where I'm yesed to death. Like, I don't want to feel like I'm just getting a yes, a yes, a yes, a yes, a yes, and this is what it is. I'm more or less looking at scenarios and saying, okay, well, I thought of it from this perspective. Have I, looked at it from a different perspective? What is this person thinking? Am I just going to, just being a hard head about this? Or am I looking at it a different way where it makes more sense to take this perspective or this angle? And with that, I ask myself, would I have done this differently? Would I have, maybe not called off my first engagement? I definitely would have called off my second engagement. That I can tell you. Would I have not gotten married? Would I have moved to a different city? I mean, there's so many decisions that you could make and still end up in the same exact place, which, I think is, I don't know. I can't tell the future. I can't tell the past. But I can go on my gut. I can go on my sixth sense. But if I could talk to myself in high school, there's certain decisions that I may have ended up in the same place. I just might have ended up at a different time period, but I don't know. But I also don't regret any of the decisions I made, because I know at that point in time I made them. And the people that have crossed me, I've learned those lessons, because I also feel like too, when someone shows you who they truly are, you have to believe them. And sometimes it's hard, but because you might love them, or you care about them, or they're a family member, or whatever the case is. It's, sometimes you have to love people for who they are, which includes their faults. Not sometimes. You have to love people for who they are, especially people that are close to you and important in your life. But you also have to love them for their faults. And because no one is perfect, including myself. So with that, I can, there's things that I've done that I think I was more selfish about. And just, people that I've dated, people that just things that I've done. But I think it would have ended up, I would have been I don't know. Now I'm really thinking about this. Now you got me really thinking. Yeah, I don't know. Forgiving is hard. I don't forgive myself on a couple of things, which I'm stuck. And like I said, I am a work in progress. With that, like I said, certain relationships or certain moves or decisions that I've made. But it doesn't mean that I can't revisit it. And it doesn't mean that I can't work on it still to move forward. And that is the moral of the story with that. So, when you're telling your younger self, like if you went to tell your younger self something different or advice for the future, I think most people, if you really come to terms with who you are and accept who you are as a person, wouldn't tell them anything. Because part of life are those surprises, are those lessons, are those abilities to make mistakes and learn from them and be where you are now. So, yeah, that was yeah. But the next thing is eliminating victimization, because shit happens to everyone and you have to find that silver lining and show gratitude. I can't, you just can't be a victim. Shit happens to everyone, and I can't emphasize this enough. And I feel like a lot in social media now, they use excuses instead of being accountable for yourself. And, it's hard for me to watch because it's not the way that I was raised. Like, I was not raised in a situation where, like, if the teacher called and said, oh, there's a problem, my parents weren't the parents that were like, oh, it's never my kid. It's like, what did my kid do? Like, I still get blamed for shit all the time. Like, it might have been something, I've been blamed for taking my grandmother's golf clubs for like a good 20 years. I didn't even have them. I didn't have any of that. I am still blamed for that. So I get blamed for everything. And it's just kind of one of those things where I'm like, I didn't even take them. I don't even have them. She misplaced them, but it was my fault. Like, stupid stuff. And it's just like one of those things where, being a victim of it and being like, oh no, my life is over because I was blamed for this and I was blamed for that. And this is not fair. Life is not perfect, but it's as fair as you make it. And if you see the silver lining in every aspect of it, A, it's going to change your mindset, but B, it's also going to make you look at a situation and say, okay, how am I going to get through this? Versus being stuck and being completely stuck in that loop of over and over and over and over again. So like I said, I fall victim to it all the time. I am not going to claim to be great at that, but being with that mindset of going, okay, well, this is silver lining. This shit happened after you mourn it. Sometimes you have to kind of go through it, but after it's happened, you want to look at it and say, okay, what came out of this? And, and sometimes things are like, and I'm not even talking about a breakup or, losing a job. I mean, it could be a situation where you have now been widowed, and it's in a circumstance that is completely out of your control. I mean, life isn't simple. Life isn't easy. So that being said, understanding that, yes, this happened and this is terrible. There's been people that, all of a sudden, they're faced with an illness, or they're faced with cancer and things that didn't, just circumstance. And with that, it's like, okay, this is what it is, or these are the things that have led me here. Maybe some of it was in part, maybe some of it's in circumstance. And with that, you have to look at it and say, okay, where is that silver lining? Where can I be thankful? And sometimes it's really hard. It's so hard to be thankful. But with that, it'll help you forgive the situation. It'll help you come to terms to allow you to forgive the situation. And you have to just kind of acknowledge it. But when you acknowledge it, it doesn't mean that it's fixed. It just means that, okay, it's here. It is what it is. This is how I've now kind of worked through it and accepted the fact that this is what I'm dealing with, at face value. But with that, starting to see that solution. Okay, how can I get through this? How can I move forward? Because otherwise you're going to be stuck in life. And that's not what you need to do. You can't be stuck. You can't be just in a situation where you're just always, replaying this and being victimized and feeling sad. And, that's why it's like you have to physically take each step. And whether or not you write it down, whether or not you kind of address it in your head and say, okay, I've gone from here to here to here to here. Like there's a full grieving process. And they talk about that a lot, even in a death, where they, meaning the internet, they meaning experts. But when they talk about those stages are very real. And with that, you kind of have to work yourself through those stages to kind of come to terms with forgiving and moving forward. So at this point, if you can't do it, then it's bullshit and you got to cut it out. Because otherwise you're just playing it over and you're just stagnant. And nobody wants to be in a situation where it's just stagnancy over and over and over again, because it gets old. It gets old for you. It gets old for your family. It gets old for friends. And hopefully you've got good enough friends that they're going to tell you to cut that shit out and move forward and call you out on your shit. And you might be mad at them. You're going to be angry at them for a bit. You're going to be upset with them because it's something that you absolutely don't want to hear. But with that, they're being your real friends and they're looking out for your best interest, which that's a good friend. So, you have to really replace your anger and fear with drive and inspiration. So it's one of those things where you have to accept the shit. And how are you getting through it? And I know that I keep repeating myself with that, but I just can't even emphasize how important that is, where you're dealt the cards and how are you going to move forward? I mean, a perfect example, as a survivor of 9/11, that was a circumstance way out of my control. I was going to work like I normally do. And ironically, I had an interview later that day with another company because I hated that job that much that I was good to leave. So when the building, when the first building had been hit, World Trade Center 1, and my building was in the process of being hit, which I was unaware of, leaving the building immediately. Part of that reason and part of the decisions that I made may have been instinct, may have been because I hated that job and I was like, screw it, it's a day off. And it was a beautiful day that Tuesday morning. But it was also one of those things too where it was a circumstance that was way out of my control. And, after, with the aftermath of everything that happened, that survivor's guilt is something so real. And, you go through these scenarios of why was I chosen to survive when, I've lost friends, I've lost, people that were very dear to me in this terrible situation. So with that, why was I saved? Why was I? And I had to learn how to forgive myself and not be like, well, this happened to me and I'm going to do it this way or I'm going to do that or whatever. And how do I give back to help with that forgiveness? And a lot of things that I've done, personally is when there's a scenario as far as with an event or a momentous moment for someone who was also tied into this terrible tragedy, I support them in any way that I can, whether it's, planning an event for them, planning a wedding or whatever the case is. And for me, as hard as it is, because it's an emotional day, because a lot of times those days are surrounded by those that were lost. And you're constantly reminded of that situation. Because for me personally, it's not that day and the act of it. It was a lot of those day-to-day moments that were taken away, or the day-to-day experiences of people that you would normally talk to or see that you take for granted. And I had a hard time forgiving myself because I took them for granted. not thinking at 25 years old that the next day would be, my life would be changed so drastically. But what I do is I give back. And as hard as it is for me emotionally, especially when I did a lot for the 10-year anniversary, it's the right thing to do. And it's painful, it's hard, but it's helped with the healing process. And I was able to forgive the situation. I was able to forgive how this happened, why it happened, what happened after. And I've gotten to the point where I'm able to do things that are for the better good because I've kind of emotionally and physically worked myself through it in a way that's like, okay, there's a bigger picture to this. There's a bigger scenario. There's a bigger understanding of what this lesson was and how it's impacted my life from then on. Part of that silver lining is moving. I have lived all over this country and had the ability to do that because of the perspective that I've been taught, where it's about knowing that tomorrow's not promised and knowing that life is really short. And if you're unhappy in a situation or you feel stuck or you feel like it's the right thing to do, fucking do it. Just do it. You know what? You can always go back. You can always go home. And you can always move back. You can always change things. You can always rebuild a relationship if it makes sense. If it's a toxic relationship, I wouldn't recommend it. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm just saying that I wouldn't recommend it. But if it's a situation that is really, truly important to you and you see that value from a full perspective of it, you can always go back. But you have to take that risk, and you got to bet on yourself to take that risk and make yourself whole again, which is so important. And, with that, as you've mourned, as you've kind of gone through that process of going, okay, I am deading this situation. I am forgiving this person. I am forgiving, this scenario. I am forgiving myself. After you mourn that and you let it go and you stop talking about it, there could be other ways that you can replace that anger with, or that fear that you have with drive and inspiration. So it can work differently for so many people. And those break rooms are like a real fucking thing. Like for some people, they want to take that anger out and they just want to beat the shit out of like old computers and TVs and just take a bat and just exhume that energy. And you know what? It's pretty fucking fun. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like it's pretty great to throw things at the wall and break it and feel good about it. But once that anger's out, it's out and it's gone. And it works for a lot of people. Some people, it might be meditating or going to a place that really drives them, like whether it's a lake or sitting on the beach and just looking at the ocean or diving into the ocean or meditating in a beautiful desert. There's different things, especially with the environment. This earth is a great healer. It really is. And there's places that just inspire you. And sometimes maybe it's traveling, like maybe it's going to a city you've never been and just immersing yourself in that culture in a way that it just gets you to forget and it gets you to forgive and it gets you to move forward. I mean, it's, what's the Julia Roberts movie? It'll come to me in a minute. You guys you'll have to, peace, love, shit. It'll come to me. But it's those are those situations where, sometimes those experiences in life teach you, eat, pray, love. Thank you. Told you. I keep reminding everybody I'm blonde. It comes full circle. But with Eat, Pray, Love, for me, when I read that book, when it was popular, when it first came out, it was one of those things. It was one of those experiences that it hit home because I have traveled and I enjoy traveling and I enjoy culture and I enjoy society and I really enjoy seeing what people are about and kind of getting to that point where you are able to let go of those day-to-day monotony of things that are happening over and over again and really allowing yourself to forgive, forget, and heal. And what that looks like for you is going to look differently than anybody else, but you have to put yourself first and find exactly what that looks like and how that looks to allow you to experience that movement and experience that mind shift. Whatever you do though, do not deflect or mask that pain. Like I talked about earlier, like talking about it, like take one night, talk about it, cry about it, laugh about it, scream about it, yell about it. But the bottom line is once you do, it's over. It's done. And masking it by drinking, masking it by doing drugs, like masking it by all these other things are just not the way to do it. Like, it's one of those things where you have to feel the pain. It sucks. And you have to feel it, and you have to feel it in a way that you're learning from it, that you're understanding it, that you're living it, so you can move forward from it. And it's going to be exhausting. And if you have to cut those ties or you have to just, feel differently about things, it's okay. However you see it at that moment, it's okay, provided you're going through it and you're not just throwing a Band-Aid on it. Because, you can do a girls' night out and you can go dancing and you can, just escape. Like, what inspires you? Like, for me personally, music and dancing has always been something that has been so inspirational for me. And having that, just that night out that you were talking about for months because you just laughed so hard or you cried so hard or you just had this great scenario that, was just fucking hilarious. Like or it was a great DJ, like anything, you felt good about yourself. You looked good. You found her, right? Founders found her. You found her in that moment. And that's the thing that is so critical, where you have to be authentic about it and dig deep into yourself. Like, I can't explain it enough. And a lot of people don't want to touch that inside. Because it's scary. It's a scary place to be. It's absolutely fucking scary. But it's real. And it's genuine. And it's authentic. And it's going to help you get to that next step. So, you're in or out. There's no other word for it. And that's what it is. And, you got to get caught up in that moment of healing. Not get up in that moment of just, breaking things down over and over again and learning to forgive, But with that also, you are setting an example for your strength. And it's not easy. And that strength is going to be seen by your children, that's going to be seen by your friends, that's going to be seen by your family, that's going to be seen by your colleagues, because it's not necessarily about what has been presented to you, it's how you recover through it and how you move on from it, because everything in life is temporary. But if you remain stuck, it's not temporary. And that's critical. That's critical to evolving as a person, as a woman, and just really truly understanding where you are and how you're going to get through it. So, with that too, you'd be surprised. There's so many people that are watching you and seeing what you do. And, these decisions that you make could be conscious, they could be subconscious, but it's an example that you set to others as well as setting it for yourself. Because sometimes too, I feel like a lot of people, and I am one included, where I will do more stuff for everybody else versus I do stuff for myself, which is bad. I'm not saying that's a good thing. But with that, in my mindset, which helps kind of perpetuate that forgiveness and perpetuate that moving forward, is that I'm like, I need to do this for everybody else as well as I need to do it for myself. But I need to do it in a way that's going to make sense, and I owe it to the scenario. I owe it to the situation. I owe it to the people that work for me or my friends or my family, whatever the case is. I owe it to them as much as I owe it to myself. Now, in a perfect world, which we all strive to be in, but aren't, is that you're doing it for yourself first. But, whatever drives you to get to that point, you get to that point. And with that, you're able to accept it a bit more and move forward. So, you would be surprised. It's just not. What'll happen is you'll change your mindset where you'll be surprised. And it's not necessarily about the situation at hand. Going forward, then you'll start to see that it's about how you handle the situation. And it'll reduce a lot of stress. It'll help you to move forward, and it'll help you to expand yourself emotionally, physically, mentally. And it's a good place to be. So as we have been talking about this, I reached out to the founders, and I got a lot of questions on this topic of forgiveness. So I'm going to address them now, and let's kind of talk about it. So the first question I got was, how do I actually forgive someone when I'm still mad? And that is part of it, because forgetting and forgiving, it doesn't necessarily always go hand in hand. And part of that, I kind of, it's going back to that scenario of having that funeral mentally, like whether it's a relationship or whether it's someone that's done you wrong, having that mental funeral of saying, okay, I'm going to put the scenario to rest. I'm going to put it to bed. I am going to put my relationship with this person to bed, because depending on the severity of the situation, in the grand scheme of things, that relationship may be completely over, or that relationship is mendable. It's going to depend on the scenario and how you really truly feel about it, and how much it's impacted your life, whether it's financial or, it could be a situation that, you happen to be dealing with, an advisor that financially, there was some issue where, they stole from you or something about that, where it's unforgivable, or it might be something that was, a crime that was done to you civilly or criminally. It depends on the severity of what it is. And being mad about it is basically your problem. It's not their problem. So you have to fix it. So how you end up fixing it and how you address that anger in doing that, and hurt people. So the goal is not to address that anger in a way that you are going to hurt others, and then they're going to have to forgive you. How you have to address it is really viewing the scenario, understanding what happened, what your part is in it, what the other person's part is it. Is it something that you can rectify by discussing with them, or is it something that you have to kind of look internally and forgive and say, this is a circumstance, it is what it is. This is a lesson out of it. This is a silver lining out of it. And, the madness will fade away. It's just the anger, I should say, will fade away. But it has to be done genuinely in a way that you have to literally forgive and just come to terms with that. So, and with time, it will walk away. But also, too, you have to look at the focus in the grand scheme of things, because like I said, it goes back to life is short. Do you want to spend your days angry, or do you want to spend your days happy and moved on? Listen, and there's no, there's no deadline on that. It's just a choice. So, there's times that I spent a lot of time being mad at something, a long time, which I look back and say, was I really? Because now I look back a few years later and I'm like, was I that angry? Maybe. I probably was. Well, I know I was. But could I have healed quicker? Absolutely. So it's a mindset. And you're in control of that. So that's something that you're not in control of what happens to you, but you are in control of how you deal with it. So that's really important. Next question is, how do I forget? Well, I know personally, being an elephant, I remember everything. And if I don't remember it, I come from a world where everybody reminds me of it. So that being said, that kind of goes back to the same type of scenario, same type of situation where you have to be in control of forgetting. or you have to be in control of letting go, because you might not forget it. And that's the thing. Or forget how it made you feel. And part of it's that's also a gray area too, because say, for instance, it's a cheating scenario and that person cheated on you and you felt like complete shit and you decided to terminate the relationship. With that, you do want to remember how it feels, because if that person, wants to have a second or third or fourth chance and you're weak to kind of fall into that same habit again where it's not for your best interest and it's something that is better if you two are no longer together, you got to kind of still remember those feels. You got to kind of remember it, but remember it in a way that is forward thinking, that's positive, where it's a lesson learned versus it being something that is just, oh, they hurt me. This is how I felt. I hate them. I can't move on. I can't date other people. I can't, and it becomes this fucking circle. And it's just crazy. Like, it's just, you just continue to do the same things over and over and over again. And it's counterproductive for yourself and, your life personally, professionally, all that stuff. So you kind of have to not forget, but learn from it. And that will help you move forward. So, with that scenario, you're not. I mean, if it's scenarios where it's a friendship, you guys got in an argument, and it was something pretty minor, and it was just something stupid that became just way blown out of a situation that needed to be, yeah. I mean, in situations like that, you should be able to kind of forget and move forward. Or, the stupid term, agree to disagree, which is kind of corny, but sometimes, like the great thing about society, which I think everybody seems to forget, especially in election years and all this other shit, is that we all have our own opinion. We all come from different ideas and different mindsets and different worlds and have our own experiences to have our unique sense of identity. So sometimes you do have to forget. If you have had a disagreement with someone, say it's a college roommate or, whatever the case is, you can forget it. It doesn't always have to be something that's so pivotal in your life. And that's the thing that you need to look at too. How, in the grand scheme of things, how important is this situation? And from there, you kind of take the actions and take the steps behind it to be able to move forward, whatever that looks like. So, does forgiving also require moving on from that person or situation? Which is also kind of what we talked about. It depends on the severity. It depends on how you feel about things. In the grand scheme of things, is this something you can live with? Is this something that is, ethically sound for you or emotionally sound for you? People make mistakes all the time. People are not perfect. Loving someone unconditionally is a very real thing. Not everyone should be loved unconditionally. That love is earned and that friendship is earned. But when you have those people that are tight with you and that are part of your inner circle, it is important to take them for the good and the bad. I mean, listen, you're going to hear shit that you might not agree with me all the time. Doesn't mean that, we all make mistakes. We all can be forgiven. It's just the level of that issue or the level of that situation really, it's the thing that's going to kind of drive that factor of moving forward. But it has to be for your best and highest good, which means forgiving this person, moving on, is that what's best for me? Yes, no, maybe. Can I live with this situation? But can I live with this situation without compromise? And compromise meaning compromising your integrity, not compromising your ideas, not compromising, because listen, we're not in a dictatorship here. We're not in a situation where it's what I say goes and this is what it is. Like, can you come to a resolution with whatever that situation is? And if you can, then it's worth keeping that person in your life or keeping that situation in your life. If you can't, and it's impeding on, being, your personal views, your, just things that are very important to you, or putting your life at risk or whatever the case is, whatever that looks like, it's got to be that. That's got to be what is that deciding factor. And with that deciding factor, sometimes it's easy to write it down. I mean, like it's sometimes like if you write stuff down, and I am still an advocate of that, is like I will write things down to see what kind of makes sense, how to connect those dots. Maybe I'm overreacting a little bit. It happens on occasion, Am I seeing everything for face value, or am I seeing stuff from my perspective, or am I seeing stuff that I just want to see that I'm also missing? And that's something that's really important too, is that are you looking at stuff from an unbiased scenario? And if you are, then you're able to see things clearer and see what is really important as far as moving forward or not moving forward, or how you're going to resolve the situation in a way that's going to work best for you. And then the last question is, how do I forgive myself when it was due to not knowing better? Yeah, we're hard on ourselves, especially as women. We are so fucking hard on themselves. And and a lot of it kind of, that forgiveness kind of comes into regret, and it kind of ties itself hand in hand. And it's one of those things that you're only working with what you know at that moment. So what you see 2 years from now and you look at that scenario back then, you can't relate to that scenario because you only knew what you knew at that moment or felt that way at that moment in time, which from that moment on will never be the same because, circumstance happens, you learn different things, maybe there's different outcomes, whatever the case is. But you have to look at that moment, this is what I had to make that decision or give that action or whatever I did at that moment was where I was at that time. And with that, you have to be able to forgive yourself in a way that you accept maybe you made the wrong decision and you take that accountability for saying, okay, maybe I fucked that up. But it's okay because I am human. I am someone that doesn't always make the right decisions. But knowing that, you have to almost be not so hard on yourself. And make your, it's okay. It's not easy because it is. We all want to be perfect. We all want to really do good for everyone. I mean, like everybody's intentions are usually really good. They fuck up. It happens. And it's just when it's presented to you and you're that person that someone has to forgive you, how do you take your ego and put it aside and say, hey, I really did this. I'm so sorry. But that sorry meaning that you truly are sorry and it's an authentic apology. But it's also something too where it's one of those things where you act on it too. Because saying you're sorry is one thing, acting on it is a whole other entity as far as living that apology and moving forward. And, you got to forgive yourself. Like you can't, it's never going to, what's happened has happened. You cannot change the past. What you can change is the present and move forward towards the future. So with that, it's understanding that we all make mistakes and understanding that you can only do what was presented to you. You can only act on what was presented to you at that moment. So that being said, it's okay. It's absolutely okay. We all make mistakes and it's just, trying to not make the same mistakes twice, trying not to hurt the same people twice and not hurting yourself in the process of it. And it's pretty powerful when you learn to accept that and you learn to move forward and look at things in a way that's a different perspective and look at it from all perspectives because it's not just about you, it's about all the other factors that come into it. And with that, it's how do I resolve this in a way that's productive? So that is forgiving in a nutshell. I say that as a nutshell, but it's really not, because it's a process that's a continual process. That's a daily process. It's a daily way of living. It's a daily way to kind of, it's a way to just change your perspective on scenarios and take situations at hand and say, okay, this is where I am now. How do I continue to move forward? And it's all part of a process. So with that, I figure when it's appropriate, and I use the word appropriate, my father is named Charlie, and we have this running joke, it's called Charlieisms, where they're not always the most appropriate comments at the appropriate time, but they're pretty fucking meaningful. And they will make me laugh. They make other people laugh, because it's just one of those, the stories behind it are pretty hilarious. But sometimes they're said in a way that aren't the softest way to say them, but they mean a lot. So I'm going to take a quote, as we're going to call it a Charlieism, and it's going to be what's been told to me millions and millions of times. Ready? Figure it out. You don't have a choice. So, in a nutshell, you don't have a choice. You got to move forward. And that's part of life, because if you stay stuck, you're stuck. And that's not what life is about. Life is precious. Life is not guaranteed. Days are not guaranteed. So you got to deal with it. Don't mask it. Don't hide it. Don't sweep it under the rug. Don't let it sit. Don't let it stew. Just you figure it out. You don't have a choice. You got to move forward. And you move forward together. You rely on those great friends that you have, family, colleagues that will help you. Because like I said, Finding Her, founders, is all about us. And we're in it together. And it's about being genuine. And it's about being authentic. It's about, and I repeat myself on this because I want to hit home with that, where it is about feeling and really feeling where you are at this moment and understanding who you are and being able to move forward, to be better sisters, mothers, daughters, friends, business people, all of these things. Like, you become a better person when you really truly understand who you are. And that's we all have choices in life, but you really don't have a choice to move forward. No matter what you do, that next day is coming. So with that, sometimes it's not always said in the most delicate way, but, you'll figure it out. So as always, I am here to help, and we're in it together. So if you've got more thoughts, topics we need to discuss, questions, reach out to me on Instagram. Send me a DM at Finding Her the Show. Or you can always go to our website, which is Stand in Formation. And keep finding her, my lovely founders, and I'll see you next week.